All right, I'm gonna set this up for you. I got a video from um, Sally Jane Delaney, and this is Andrew Collins, and he is in Egypt, and there'll be more to come and explain this. But he's in a tunnel system that they were digging, and I looked at it, and she tipped me off to the fact that there was red ochre coming out of the walls and all this business, which is blood. Red ochre is ferrous oxide of the O3 variety, which is blood cells, and it comes out in a powdery form. And he explains that it's oozing from the walls as red ochre powder. He says it, and you can see it all over the place. Now, what they do is they excavate the actual arteries. And when they get to this stuff, the white looking stuff, that's the actual artery. That's tough. So, but this here, you scrape this out with your fingernails. Now, that's what happens. These things are just easily excavated. And whatever they see when they ever go in these things, they see the actual vessel walls. You see this thickness of the wall? That's the vessel walls. You see it? And that is tough. So anyway, he'll explain all this stuff, and then I will show arteries oozing red blood all over the place. And I am claiming that the tunnel that he was in, they were excavating for gold more than likely, and all of these things are on top of arterial passageways, and that's where they got their water from and all this business. And I explain it all coming up, and I show you how you're going to find gold that would fill this entire cavity for maybe, I don't know, 30, 40, 50 feet, 100 feet, and up maybe 100 feet in the air. So there'd be a fair good substantial quantity of gold. And I'm going to show you where to find it. It's all over the place. Not hard to find. And if you find it, fine. If you don't, it's not up to me. I really don't. Doesn't matter to me whatsoever. All right, here's your red ochre. And you see this red ochre like a stream running out of here, just flowing out of this wall? This wall is muscle, and I'll show you. Well, you can't see any more of it than that, but these striations, they're muscle, and I know this quite well. And if you look very closely up here, you see that? There's two holes here. Now, normally there's a vein and an artery, and they're usually very close. Now, this could be two arterial passes, I don't know. Usually one of them is black and one of them is redder. But anyway, this is where the red ochre has come out of here, and these are the two, and that might be the vein. It probably is the vein, because it looks pretty black in there, and it might not have purged out of there, and this has just dripped all over and run down. And I mean, look at how much red blood is there. Now, all blood contains transition metals, and the transition metals are really what makes your body work. They don't even realize this, I don't think, in chemistry. I mean, in biology, they don't understand the transition metals. Transition metals give and take. They do carboxylation. They take in the different material from the colon, from your your intestines, and they take that product by these metals, and then they deliver it here and drop it there and pick something up, and they collect in the blood. Now, as they're transferring through the blood, they're not in any lumps or anything, little tiny molecules, and that's what they do. They're molecular little things that go around, and they have been created by bacteria. Bacteria in your body actually creates these metals. It separates them out of the food that you eat. And if you don't have the right bacteria, you're going to be chronically ill because you will not have the correct metals. And the correct metals aren't there. It can't pick up and deliver the correct properties in your body. And when you die, those moving little bits and pieces of metals have nowhere to bond to. They have no place to do it. They say, hey, what do I do now? And they say, well, you're kind of heavy, and you really don't want to do anything, just fall down to the bottom. And what they do is they settle. Now, in the Valley of the Kings, apparently the thing was laying down sideways, and the gold settled here and there. I really don't know where they found the gold, but they have excavated it, and the remainder was the tombs. Now, what are the gold in there? I don't know, because it depends on how the thing hit the ground or whether it was standing up. The ones that are standing up, the feet that are in the ground, there's no question. Absolutely no question whatsoever. that there will be gold in the bottom of those feet, and all of the heavy metals will have drained straight down, and that's what would happen. They'd be elevated in the water, standing up, buoyant and dead, and then all of that moisture still remaining wet because they're in an aqueous solution, which is similar to the chemistry of the body, 7.4 pH approximately. And as that heavy metals have nowhere else to go, they drift to the bottom, and they're going to end up in those stag horns, or whatever they call them, ram's horns. All right, look at this structure right here. If the guy was standing up and that blood flowed down this and collected right here in these branches, you would see this structure and a couple little twigs coming off it, because it would come down and start to fill up here until it clogged this, and then there'd be a little trip to come down this way, and eventually it would fill up here, and that would be what you'd see. Let's see if we can find one of those. And lo and behold, they do have these structures, and they're found commonly, but normally in silver. This one happens to be in gold, so they must have gone a little deeper. The silver is higher up in the ground. But these will be collected in this form, just like that, and they will be at the bottom where the feet are, and the entire drain will drain down until it hits this, and then it will start to fill this way, and it will clog itself up until it comes back this way, and that'll be the end of the gold. And that was what you'll find. But you need like a bus or something to drive it through those veins and arteries that are in the things I'm talking about, that will be filled with gold in that manner. Now you see that right up there? That's the wrinkle where that attaches to the red meat up above. It's called an abrupt transition. And the tendons these are the fibrils, and they're hex fibrils. It's all fully understood in the anatomy books if anybody paid attention. This red is the blood that's dripping down from here, from wherever it's being serviced with blood. And that's what that is, and that's Devil's Tower. And in the ground is a ball, which is the calcaneus heel. And this is the calcaneus tendon. Well, one of them will be the calcaneus tendon. Somewhere it comes down here. But it's just, that's what it is. So, and then the gold is going to be in the ground, because when you're standing there, or when the guy was standing there, and he's dead, and he's floating, and everything is suspended and up raised in the air, the metals will no longer be transitioning, because that's what they do. They transition. They take in carbon, they act to this, and they give and they take, and now they don't, because this guy's dead. They just drift and 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 settle at the bottom in gigantic, huge chunks of gold, which would be in here, enormous, enormous, enormous chunks of gold. And I will show you what they will look like, because they'll be in the shape of veins and arteries. Alright, I'm going to let him explain it. This is under the Fair Use Act. I'm just commenting on what they found and what he's saying. Now, I'm going to let him explain what's going on here, and then we'll discuss it.
Start off with, they're completely devoid of hieroglyphs. None, not one. Nowhere, which is odd in itself. Now, that either means that maybe it was those places were so sacred that they didn't warrant them, or there may have been stucco on the wall, you know, kind of plaster, and there may have been some hieroglyphs on them which have since fallen down, you know, obviously dampness or something like that made them fall. But the only thing that we did discover is incised parallel lines here, like this.
Listen to the line.
But in odd places, I mean, under curves and things like this, they seem to be
parallel lines.
Whether this is correct or not, I don't know, but there's a possibility
it's
they
not
have
correct.
a symbolic function. You find similar things in Paleolithic caves of Europe.
Because it's the tissue layer.
The other thing is that there's a lot of red ochre
Right there it is, right
oozing
there.
out the walls as powder.
You hear that? Red ochre oozing out the walls as powder. Let's play that again.
Caves of Europe. The other thing is that there's a lot of red ochre
That's blood.
oozing out the walls as powder, and
Dried blood.
some of it covers parts of the wall, and it is possible that they may be murals of some description.
All right, let me explain this. He is inside. When they were in this cave, That is a blood vessel, and it's an arterial blood vessel. They literally could dig it out with your hands. That's why he said, look at all this red powder, this red ochre powder. That's blood cells, and it's still leaking into these blood vessels when they dig them out and so forth. Depends on the conditions and the moisture and the water table and all that business. But obviously he's seeing that. Now, I showed you the other arterial emanation of a gigantic cliff face. And it's a similar sort of thing, and these are even bigger. Now, when he said plateau, it's a foot. That's why. That was on a foot. And they make them all of them, even the forum and all those things in ancient Greece and all of that stuff. They were always up on these elevated plateaus. Everybody, why is that? Why is that? Well, that's where they put them. All right, I'm going to let him explain this. This is, you can see these passageways and tunnels, and they branch off here and there for all these tombs. Now, see, plan of the tomb of the birds and all this business. Now, listen to what he has to say.
This was the plan that I did for of it.
You see, it's all Mudfossil.
4 different trips in there. This was the entrance is up there. It's not working too well. This up the top there. That's the entrance to Tomb of the Birds. This is the main tomb. This is the main cave passage that we
scrape that out with your hand.
And this point here is as far as we got. And it actually, at that point, there's a chamber that goes down to a small tube, which you can see here.
Blood vessel,
and
actually.
We made the decision not to go any further because we just were ill prepared for it. I mean, equipment-wise, mentally, and everything.
All right, I'm not going to bother going any further, but I mean, you can see what you have. Now, if they carved all this stuff out of here, and you could do it with a stick, and they did. And they did. And they did this all over the world, too. This is not unique to this particular location. They did this. All the pyramids in South America and everywhere, all of them that I can find, are built on top of tendons. Or let me put it this way. They're built on plateau formations of some sort of limestone, which is mostly tendinous material. And it's mostly from giants standing in the ground, and they're just petrified in the ground in that mud in the flood, and they got like pre-blanched in the 7.4 pH water, and the heavy metals fell to the ground, and that's why they're excavating these places for the gold. When they were done, they used them for tombs. I would too. And that's all I can tell you. That's what it looks like to me. Now, don't forget, Mudfossils University. That's where you want to go. And, you know, there's a lot of problems with mudfossils now. Nobody's out there that really understands. I've been the only one. Actually, this is a fact. I'm the only one that has been really researching this in the correct manner. I found the mud fossils themselves, not just mud, not just dirt with DNA. I had that all tested. I sent to the Max Planck University and Harvard and Yale and all of them. And Johns Hopkins, they all refused to look at it. But then all of a sudden they're publishing papers that there's DNA in mud. And before there was no DNA anywhere. Oh, you can't find it, it's impossible. Well, as soon as I sent this stuff off, now it's in dirt and it's in mud and you can't hardly not find it. And that's true. You can't not find it. So what they found is irrelevant because it's just stuff that's on the floor. But I have the actual fossils. So that's the key. Anyway, this is the key. This is what's going on. There's a structure around here, that blood vessel. Sooner or later, if you dug all this stuff out, you're going to hit very, very, very solid rock because the blood vessels turn into extremely hard substance. And so when they say, oh, they dug through this solid stone, no, they didn't. They dug through this kind of dusty stuff and got it out of there and took over what metals were there, and then they left the tube there, and then they chiseled it square and that sort of stuff. That's what happened, and that's just what it is. I can't tell you any difference because there is no other way. This is it. All right, they did all kinds of surveys and this and that with ground penetrating things. Now you can listen to what he says, but this eventually what he's getting down to is there's these tunnels that they say they're tunnels, and probably they are now. But at one time they were blood vessels, and that's the way blood vessels operate.
Well, which is interesting because just as a bit of a laugh, Rodney Hale used dowsing in 2007, before we'd actually discovered anything to do with the
Well, there's no reason to bother with that. But anyway, these are confirmed as areas in the ground where they are some kind of a hole or something going on there. Now, they did the same thing down in South America too, to the pyramids down there. Exact same situation. So this is blood vessels, and then what they do is they tap into. There's going to be water under here because in this plateau, wherever the plateau runs, on the periphery of the plateau is where the blood vessels invest, or maybe in the center. But if they dig down straight enough through one of those blood vessels, they're going to hit the water table and they're going to have water. And it's not that hard to dig down. It's not like you're digging through solid rock. And a lot of them are purged automatically because the water table forces them up. And that's why you see waterfalls on the top of these plateaus coming down. That water didn't just grow up there. That water is being pushed up through arterial passageways and forced because of the groundwater pressure is high. And in the rainy seasons down in Peru and all these places down there, Machu Picchu, that's how the water gets up there. Then they put it in cisterns, save it, and for, you know, I mean, it keeps coming forever because there's a lot of water in that region, I believe. I'm not positive. But it does, I know for a fact, they do get water. I watch them take. I've watched all these shows of time scanners and all this, and it's, you know, every bit of it's from creatures. Herodium, I believe that Herodium they call it. It's Herodotus, not Herodotus. Herod, King Herod, built. They thought he built this thing and constructed a huge mountain thing. But it isn't. It's exactly the same as everything. And I believe the pyramids were built down from flat-topped plateaus, and they took the pieces and dropped them side to side to side and going down. And I'll show you what the beginning construction piece that I believe is what they found here in these plateaus. And at this time, these things were fertile here. This is, I believe, you know, this goes a long time ago. And I know this was in the Sahara was an ocean, and it broke out through the eye of the Sahara in Mauritania, and that's quite apparent. And it ran off the coast and created the Cape Verde Islands. Very, 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 very simple to see. And Plato puts Atlantis there too. So that's what it was, Eye of Sahara's Atlantis. So all this stuff is coming to fruition and coming to unfold, and it's all true. Dragons, and, you know, I mean, it's what it is. You have to deal with it. Case closed. All right, I'm going to let him speak, and he's talking about they did some drilling under the Sphinx and around the pyramid to see for tunnels and all this. And they ran into the water table, and that is what happens is the arterial passageways are going to let water run through them, and that's how they used to get the water. So if you find an arterial passageway coming up from the ground, that's where your well is going to be very easy to tap into that. They didn't have to do a lot of digging. They were much smarter than we are. So listen to this.
There are no hidden tunnels or chambers under the Sphinx. That's his official line. But, as I said, in 2008 they were drilling again, supposedly under the auspice that they were checking the water table, but I know for a fact that they were looking for hidden chambers there and actually did find cavities. But because they are beneath the waterline, which is one of the banes of all archaeological research in the area around the Sphinx, which is at the lowest part of the plateau at Giza, they're going to have to remain unexplored because of the water table. But anyway,
okay, I want to mention something. Did you hear what he said? Plateau at Giza, and he said that these chambers and tunnels were in the water below the plateau of Giza, which, in my mind, all plateaus are sticking out feet more than likely. They were the mud fossils of the giants that were stuck in the mud and drowned as they stood there being drowned over the course of time, and they finally drowned, and their feet were stuck in the mud, and they created plateaus where the abrupt transition from the foot to the rest of the structure up above, which is the it's the red meat that breaks right off at an abrupt transition. Devil's Tower is exactly that, and I'll show you that right now. But what I'm getting at is the Great Pyramid and all of this stuff around it was loaded with gold. And the Valley of the Kings, same thing. All these tombs were dug out of veins and arteries that were already in the ground and easily excavated, because the blood comes out very easy. It's red and like sand, and then the encapsulating blood vessels are like stone, very hard stone, extremely hard stone. So that's what confused everybody.